Joining me is a former government minister. Let me say a pleasant good evening to Austin Jack Warner. Pleasant good evening, Mr. Warner.
Good evening, Mikee.
It's a pleasure to have you on, and I hope you have a restful Labor Day, and so much is taking place. I want to get into the meat of it here. You've made it quite clear that there was nothing grave that occurred during this recent internal election campaign in the United National Congress that should cause permanent damage. Expand on that.
I agree. Listen, there was a call for internal elections. The political leader of the UNC, Kamala Prasad Bisesa, gave in and she declared the date for the elections. The elections were fought hard and well. One side won, another side lost. And for me, that should be the end of the matter. After all, the more important issue is how do you remove the PNM from office, and in particular Keith Rowley, who has been the worst prime minister this country has ever seen. So I don't understand the reason for people gloating and calling names of the others and doing all kinds of things to divide the party, the UNC, and not focus instead on the PNM. I don't understand the reason for this. I really can't.
But what about those who would weigh in and say, listen, taking that in consideration, those who demanded for the internals, they did not think about this, that at this time, why should there be any process that may be perceived as destabilizing the party when the focus should be on dealing and preparing for the upcoming general election?
Mikey, be that as it may, and it may well have been the way you have described it, but at the end of the day, that is now over. Let us now put that behind us and concentrate and point our guns at the People's National Movement. What is there to gain by calling names, by calling for Ms. Bisesa to go, by saying this and that? What is to be done? The same way rather ask the West Indies to rally, the West Indians, to rally around the West Indies. Why the hell we don't rally around Mrs. Prasad Bisesa and see how we can remove this government from office? At the end of the day, there is no way Mrs. Prasad Bisesa will go except through an election. So I don't understand what is this thing about. Let us spend our time and energy to fight the PNM, Mikey, please.
Many times in politics, things become a bit cloudy when you're dealing with perhaps those who are led and driven by egos, overblown ambition, bitterness, trying to carve out their own niche. How do you deal with that? How do you find that balance? Because the issue of trust is going to come up. Can I trust you? And we have seen how things played out with a former Prime Minister, Mr. Manning, and his deputy political leader, who is now the Prime Minister. That did not end well. How do you then find the balance here to move forward and fight and prepare for the next phase?
One must be politically mature and look and see what is the bigger goal. One must measure not how much one might win, but what one might lose. And if it means that in behaving that way you will lose the government next year in 2025, and if that does happen for the next 10 years, then for God's sake, it calls for a level of political maturity that is lacking in the country at this point in time.
But should there be a narrative on both sides? I mean, those who may want to reach out with an olive branch, and of course, accommodations for them. But of course, that will come with terms and conditions. How do you iron out those terms and conditions without losing focus on the big prize?
At the end of the day, I said, look, let's bury the hatchet, not in each other's back, but let's bury the hatchet and let us sit down around the table and let us understand that we are in this together. There is no way, and I mean, I don't care what anybody says, I think, but there is no way that the UNC can win the election on its own. There is no way. There is no way you can beat the PNM by UNC fighting on its own. And particularly after that Lengua in the road defeat. What has to happen, therefore, is that one must sit down around a table and strategize and see what we have to do and what we have to not do so as to accomplish our objective. What is our objective? To get into power, to get into office. Otherwise, we will have to account to future generations for where we have led this country. And if by chance the PNM were to get into office in 2025, I will tell you this, Mikee. Every young man, young woman should head to Piaco and jump on a flight and go up north. Because they will eat the bread the devil need. Yeah. Sorry to be so.
No. I understand what you're saying, and I'm sure the viewers do as well. But what we need to take into consideration, and I'm just throwing this out, perhaps giving you a spin on it. But you have dealt with many of the politicians. You've been in many political quarters. How challenging is it for you to tell someone, listen, I need you to put aside whatever needs to be put aside and focus when you're dealing with people who may have deep-rooted insecurities? That, Jack may be coming in and he may be pushing me out, and this one may be pushing me out. I have been here. I have carved out my niche. I have been dedicated. I've been committed. How do you deal with that on a personal level?
You have to tell the persons who think like that this is not about them. This is about a country and about future generations. You have to tell them that the person who is important is not me, not you, not I, but the people, the young, especially young people. And you have to make them understand that is now or never. Because I repeat, if by chance the PNM wins the election next year, for the next 15 years, if not 10 or 15 years, you have one government in office. Is that the burden we want to bear? Is that what we want to tell our children and our children's children that we have contributed to? I don't think so.
And let me ask you this as well. I mean, what's your takeaway from what transpired on Monday's by-election?
I think that the fact that the UNC got less votes in Quinam Mondiablo and got less votes in Lengua Indian Walk, that should send a signal to us that all is not well in what we believe to have been the UNC strong areas. All is not well. How the hell could the PNM get 400 or 500 more votes in Quinam Mondiablo? How could they get 600 more votes in Lengua Indian Walk and we lost 300? How could that be? Especially we lost the votes and we lost the seat in a corporation that is fully, almost totally controlled by the UNC. That is the problem, How could we, in a corporation that the UNC fully controls, how could we have lost? And I know some of the reasons, which I wouldn't suggest at this point in time. But the fact is this, we must use that as a wake-up call for what's happening down the road.
Yeah, and I wish you could have dived into it, but I know you're not going to do that at this time. But I need to ask you this. Now, there are three fundamental factors when it comes to a successful political campaign. One is timing, two is message, and three is money. How important is number three?
And three is the most important.
Yeah, how important?
Three is the most important because you, especially when you're out of office and you don't have the treasury at your disposal to give houses and lands and money to repair homes and all kind of foolishness. When you don't have that, you have to have money to send your message, to pay for your message using all the means necessary, including social media and regular media. You have to live on messaging. You have to make sure that whatever programs you promise the people must be superior to what the other side offers. You have to make sure, and all that costs money, all that costs money. You have to make sure that the proper staff is trained almost a year in advance to know what they must do on election day at the election at the polling stations and so on. This calls for training, this calls for money, and a host of other things. So you need money. But to get money, you have to show businesses in particular that there is a possibility that you could win. And once they see that, they'll come running to you instead of you running to them.
So we have the timing, I guess. The message is there. I mean, the time is everyone's talking about change. The message is clear that this is basically the worst performing government in the history of Trinidad and Tobago.
Ever.
So that hurdle, as far as that challenge, which is money, is something that has to be obtained. And it seems as though when that is mentioned, many people just simply shy away from it and say, don't worry about that. Things are going to work out. We're going to have our people, our base is intact, our loyal soldiers are there.
Foolishness. And there are many businessmen also who make promises to you while you're in the embryonic stage of your campaign. And when the campaign progresses, they withdraw, They forget to make promises. They give you all kind of reasons. Boy, I can't give you 10, I can only give you 1, and so on. You have to be also on the lookout for those kinds of people, those kind of businesses. It's not easy. It is not easy. And that is why I'm saying we must sit down. We must sit down. Bring all the people together on a table, iron out the differences, and then let us as a party let us strategize and see how we will get into office in 2025. Words heaven help us.
Did it surprise you when, based on many of the political pundits weighing in and saying that the PNM fought that by-election as a general election? Did it surprise you?
It did not, because they wanted to send a message, especially the Moruga Tableland area. Why do you think they're doing so much work in Moruga Tableland? Why do you think they're giving so many people benefits from money to houses and so on in Moruga Tableland? Why do you think they're building so many retaining walls in Moruga Tableland? That's not by accident. They are targeting Moruga Tableland as one of the seats they have to win. They are targeting that. Are we targeting Toapuna? Are we targeting St. Joseph? No, we are not. And I'm saying, Mikee, the time is not on our side.
And when you look at it, what stands out the most, I mean, as far as all that has transpired, whether it be crime, whether it be the economy, I mean, when you wake up on a daily basis and you read the headlines and you interact with people, I know you try to take it a little slower than you usually would have, but when you look at it now and you think about your grandchildren, what comes to mind?
I am saying they are in serious trouble. They are in serious trouble unless the kind of political change takes place that I'm talking about. And that is why I said, if in 2025, for some reason, the PM gets into office, every young man should head to Piaco and take a plane and go up the road, because that will be the end for them for years to come. And therefore, that is why I'm so strong. I'm so almost bitter that we should have this talk, this meeting of the mind, so to speak, and bring everybody together. Don't gloat and call them this and that and say if it wasn't for this or that, we'd have win Moruga Tableland or Lengua. Forget that. We past that stage. There's nothing we can do about that. What we can do about tomorrow, let us do today. And in politics, that's everything. Let us do today what we should do tomorrow. That must be your goal.
There seems to have been a youthful turnout in the by-elections. And last time I spoke to you, you mentioned that you were a bit concerned about whether the young people were gravitating to the message. Have you started to see any change as far as that moving forward?
I see young people moving away, and that has me worried. But let me say this before I forget. One shouldn't put too much emphasis on the local government election, by-election, A by-election is one thing. A general election is something else. I recall when I formed the ILP, I was able to win that seat by beating my opponent 3-1. 3-1 in a by-election in Shogunas West. But when you call the general election, Shogunas West went straight back to its roots. So I'm saying don't overread too much in a local government by-election. These things, of course, are specific to particular areas and particular goals and so on. But in general election, that is something else.
There is some concern, some folks that believe that there may be the forming of a new party. We're hearing about Michaela and all these names coming about.
Dotishness. This country has 30 political parties, 1.4 million people, of whom there are about 1 million voters, for 30 political parties. That is absurd. It is obscene. It's a misplacement of all kinds of resources that you need otherwise. So I don't even give that much thought. Michaela, my good friend, I know her very well. She too must sit down and come to the table as well. They must sit down, and they must not expect that because they have a party in numbers, so to speak, that they must be accorded some kind of privilege. No, let us be humble. Sit down and say, listen, the country is bigger than I am.
And one of the things you always advocate, even way back, is that you must never lose touch with the ground. Find out what's
Never,
going on.
never.
It's
Even
very
as,
important.
even as I live today, even as I live today, Mikee, I am still in touch with the ground. I can still go to the market in Toapuna and meet everybody and shake hands and bond and so on. I can still go to Rima Market and do the same. I can still walk the street without looking behind my back and my shoulders. You know why? Because I have never left the ground. Never.
And that's very important, and that fits right into the components. Any closing comments? Because I know you love your card games. I don't want to keep you away from your card games on your holiday.
Yes,
I know that. Go
yes.
ahead, closing comments.
All I want to say is that if you could possibly try to get to some of these so-called political leaders and try to let them understand what is necessary, what has to be done, and let them try to bury their egos and so on, and look for the common good. If you could do that, bring them on your program, Mikee. Let us interact and ask them questions and so on. Let them see the light, because to me, we don't have the time that we think we have.
Yeah, and you're right about that. And come August, we'll be coming to 1 year before the end of this term.
And I tell you, we don't think we have the time we have, Mikee.
Yeah,
right?
I think those who know
the only
that.
thing that is keeping back Rowley from calling the election now is his fear that Manning got it prematurely twice and lost. That is all that's holding back now, you know. I mean, he's biting at the bit, so to speak, but he's afraid. But don't take this fear, right, for granted. Let us get our act together.
All right. I want to thank you so much for taking time out on this holiday to join us and, of course, to enlighten us on that. Keep up the good work, and we'll be speaking with you periodically. Thank you again.
Okay, Mikee.
Thank you.
Thanks.